Hello, everybody. Welcome into the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, joined by Nolan and Jake. There is a lot to get into today. Some news around mandatory minicamp that has started for about half of the teams in the league. We'll talk about some more stuff surrounding the NIL changes with the House settlement. NBA Finals is about to tip off as well. We'll preview Game 3, the Knicks' new head coach, and much more. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with us here on a beautiful Tuesday, June 10th. But like I was saying, we are going to get here starting off with the big topic of the day, that being, of course, NBA Finals Game 3. We talked a lot about the disparity between Game 1 and Game 2. We talked about what each team needed to do in order to get a massive Game 3 win, and we'll get a little more into that as well. But for starters here, is this a must-win game for the Indiana Pacers, Jake?
I don't know. I'm going back and forth, honestly. I think one of game 3 or 4 obviously is must win. They need to win at least one on their home court. Obviously, it's much easier if you get that win in game 3 and take the early series lead. You take a little less pressure off of yourselves heading into game 4. I think it's a game that you definitely want to try to win for sure, obviously. I don't know if it's a must win, but it certainly puts a lot more pressure on the Pacers if they're not able to pull out this game 3 in front of their home crowd when this Oklahoma City Thunder team is playing some phenomenal basketball all around, playing some of the best defense we've ever seen. They need to be able to get a win on their home court in order to have a chance to win this series, I think.
You talk about it going back home, and I think that's a huge piece of the puzzle here. The Pacers at home this postseason, 6-2. Pacers coming off of a loss this postseason are 4-0. Now, the other piece of this puzzle is the Thunder on the road. They've been dominant, but they have been just over 500, 4-3 this postseason on the road. Is that the kind of advantage that's going to give the Pacers a huge jump up, at least early in this game where they struggled, Nolan, or is that just kind of a wash right now?
I mean, I wouldn't really call it a wash. This team, like you said, they're 4-0 since losing a game, and I think tonight could be one of those nights where they can make it 5-0. I think, they're playing in Indiana. They're in their home court. They are there playing in front of their home crowd, and they are just playing. Yeah, we know you just saw them a loss in game 2. A pretty big 16-point loss, but they weren't getting manhandled. They were playing good, tough basketball, and they were making some shots, but they just couldn't get it done. I think that even with them, being back there tonight in Indiana, they're still going to be fine. I think this is a game where, like you said already, they've already been down. They're 4-0 since losing a game, and I think tonight's going to be it's going to be getting to go 5-0. I think this is a bounce back game for them. Even though OKC has been the more dominant team this postseason between these two teams, they have led. OKC has led for every second besides that 0.3 seconds in that first game. I mean, OKC's been playing better. So, but even though I think this is a big bounce back game for Indiana, they can kind of come back in the front of their home crowd, just kind of bounce back, get the energy up, get a little 2-1 lead. Because I believe this is the must-win game for Indiana. I think if they lose this game, OKC will then go on to win game 4 to take a 3-1 lead going back to OKC for game 5. And I don't think Indiana can handle that. I think this is a must-win game for them tonight. So they have a little leeway in case they lose game 4 to go back to OKC with the tied game series 2-2. And I think that's important. Having that cushion to if we lose one more, it's fine. But we're still 2 losses away from getting out tonight. In my opinion, is a must-win game for Indiana.
Yeah, definitely a very important game for Indiana. One of the keys to the game is going to be their star, their big number 1 option. in Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton, if you look at his stats from the first 3 quarters in both game 1 and 2, they have been abysmal. One of the things that has been really tough for him is to get to his spots. Lou Dort has been playing incredible defense on him, and that's the specialty. That's the calling card of this Oklahoma City Thunder. Is there some kind of adjustment, Jake, that you think Halliburton can make heading back home here to feed off and get a little bit more aggressive and be a little better in the first 3 quarters? Maybe not dig themselves too deep into a hole where they have to make these magical comebacks.
I think the big thing for Tyrese Halliburton is just trying to tap into that fourth quarter mindset earlier into the game. We see this guy kind of flip a switch once those last 12 minutes of the game hit, right? This is a guy that when the lights are brightest, that's when we see Tyrese Halliburton really kind of perform at his best and shine. But this is a guy that if he's able to kind of tap into that earlier into the game, look for your shot a little earlier, try to get a little more rhythm going in the first, second quarter, and, hopefully get 10, 12 points maybe in the first half, just so you get a little bit of momentum, a little bit of rhythm for when that fourth quarter hits and you know that Tyrese Halliburton's really going to turn it on. I think if he's just a little more aggressive in trying to get to his spots, trying to get his shot off early on in the game, it's going to help him and the Indiana Pacers later on down the line.
For sure. And you talked a little bit about getting that quick start, but the Thunder, on the other hand, that's been what they do really every single time, regardless win or loss. They've gotten out to these fast starts. Defensively for Indiana, is there, again, this is something that they need to focus on. Maybe it's more on the offensive end, playing at that fast pace and not turning the ball over. But what kind of adjustments do you think they need to make, again, just outside of Halliburton, as a team as a whole, to not fall into these 20-point, 15-point deficits that they've fallen into in games 1 and 2s, Nolan?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it's a hard thing to do because, I would say, you want to play a lot more man-to-man. You got to play a lot closer and tighter defense. With that, SGA is known for, getting to the lane and being able to draw fouls. That could be a big problem. You don't want him going to the line because he's a very, very good free throw shooter. He has obviously had a lot of practice this year with being at the line. Just throughout the entire postseason and regular season, he is a really good free throw shooter. So you can't just be guarding him face on and expect him not to try to draw a foul and get to the free throw line. So that's what I would want. I'd want them to play, man-to-man face guard defense, but on some people it's easier. When you're playing a center like Hartenstein or Chet, it's a lot easier. But when you're playing a very versatile guard like SGA, that's not as easy. Playing the zone, it's also, it's good to play the zone, but it's also, pretty hard the situation because, when you're playing in the zone, stretch bigs are able to take advantage of that. Chet Holmgren, a very good stretch big, very young, very athletic. He's a really good three-point shooter for his size of like 7'1", 7'2". He's a very good three-point shooter. He cannot leave open on a wing. Hartenstein is, he's not as, efficient beyond the arc as, compared to Chet, but he still can shoot it. So it's just a weird situation. You can't play face guard. You can't be guarding him. You can't, honestly, if I'm the Pacers, realistically, there really isn't an easy way to do it. But if I had to play between like a real like example, just between zone or man to man, I'm going man to man. I'm putting my best defender on SGA all night and letting the rest of the team just kind of let them work. I mean, face to face, one-on-one defense is the easiest defense to play, in my opinion. It's just you on one-on-one, just to let the best man win. And I think that's the best way to do it. Considering, I think that if we play the zone, I think that Oklahoma is a lot faster. They're a lot quicker. They can collapse the defense and they can make a lot more plays out of it. I think if they're playing man to man, I think Indiana's a fast enough team to keep up with anybody trying to drive. They're also tough enough or strong enough to be able to play with anybody that want in the paint. Whether it be any big, any guard trying to drive, they can match that and make some good defensive stops. So realistically, from the Pacers, I'm trying to play maybe some tighter defense, maybe man on man, see where it goes. If it's working, keep with it. If it's not, switch to something else. Maybe like a 2-3 zone, 3-2 zone, whatever. You have to make adjustments, but I think the man-to-man is probably the best way to go for them tonight.
Yeah, no, definitely one of the key things is the play of Shea and just overall that big three for the Thunder, right? You have a MVP, one of the best guard seasons we have ever seen in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's getting to his spots at ease against this Pacers team. Not one person on that team can really contain him, and we've seen that. 38 and 34 points in the first two. But one of the other parts of it that maybe gets swept under the rug a little bit is how important the play of Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams are for this Thunder squad. When they aren't comfortable shooting, if they are a little bit out of rhythm, it becomes very much iso ball. It becomes, Shai, can you win this game for us? Which there's no doubt he can, right? Again, 38 and 34 points in 2 games in the NBA Finals. But I think the key for the Pacers is to make the rest of the team uncomfortable. We saw guys off the bench like Caruso, like Wiggins step up last game in game 2. If they can avoid having that unlikely hero on a very deep team, it's going to be a lot harder for the Thunder to go ahead and make a unsurmountable lead early on. But is there a way to contain Shai at all with how he's been playing? Do the Pacers have a defender that they can throw on him in game 3 or double team him in game 3 to find a way to at least slow him down, keep him at least inefficient? Like the game they won, he shot around 50% from the field, which is pretty inefficient for Shai, who's usually shooting closer to that 60-65% mark. Is there some kind of strategy that we could see to stop or at least slow down Shai?
I don't know. I think the easiest way is just get him his points, and try to focus on some of their depth guys. You let Alex Caruso and Aaron Wiggins combine for 38 points in game 2. If you try to focus on that and limiting Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, Shai's going to get his 30, 34, 38, whatever it be, probably every night of this NBA Finals. So I think you maybe don't emphasize as much on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and try to take away some of those supporting pieces to kind of suffocate them and force it to be all on SGA's shoulders to the point where it's almost a lot more manageable for the Pacers to try to go win this game.
Yeah. We take a look at this, though. Game 3 has had a lot of talk leading up to it. Heads to Indiana for the first time. Start with you, Nolan. Who do you have in this one?
Yeah, I've been saying it for the past few days now. This is a must-winning game for Indiana. They cannot fall down. They cannot fall in the series. They really can't. I think if they fall, then the series will ultimately already be over. Climbing back against OKC is almost near impossible, just how good and how consistent they are as a team and how good they can play when they're above. I think this is a must-win game for Indiana. Even though I have OKC winning the series, I think Indiana will win this game tonight. I think they know that the stakes are on the line. I think that they know that if they fall down short in the series, that they will be very hard for them to come back. And I think tonight they'll play with that ability so they don't have to fall, so they won't be falling in the series. I think tonight it's a win for Indiana with their first game on their home court, and hopefully I'm right because I really do want to see the series go pretty deep. I don't want to see a 5-1 series or 4-1 series win get done in 5. I want this to go to 7. I want every series to go to 7, but I want this one to most go to 7 because it's the finals. So tonight I have Indiana in 3 or winning game 3 and taking the series lead 2-1.
Yeah, I'm gonna go the other way, I think, in this one and pick the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think just the way they've been playing on both ends of the ball, it's gonna be too much for Indiana. Even though Indiana is on their home court, I just think how dominant Oklahoma City looked in game 2, I think that's going to continue in game 3. We're going to see Oklahoma City make it a little more competitive, I think, in this one. But I think it's still Oklahoma City taking the lead 2-1.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you guys, or at least agree with you, Jake, here. I had Thunder are going to win this. We talked a little bit about it, but I mean, outside of the defense from that Thunder, giving them fits, Tyrese Halliburton really struggling. The fact that the Pacers haven't won a Game 3 all playoff run long. They've won in 5 games, and in 6 games, and in all of those series, they've lost Game 3. Now, that's less of a trend and more of just one of those things that happens. But when you take a look at this team, they haven't shown the ability to consistently, I will say, break through that Thunder defense without turning the ball over and playing sloppy basketball, and that concerns me a lot. Because of that, I'm taking the Thunder here in Game 3. It's not going to be an easy road for the for the Pacers to come back, but it should be a really good game. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention over to the NFL. A little bit of news surrounding Aaron Rodgers, the new Steelers quarterback, new Steelers signal caller. He was allegedly the third choice this offseason for the Steelers. How is this going to affect them? How is it going to affect Aaron Rodgers, who famously pretty big ego over there? And is that why it took him so long to make his decision? We'll talk about all that and more coming up next here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, joined by Nolan and Jake. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over Game 3 of the NBA Finals, tipping off any minute now here. They're always a little bit late to their tip-offs, but it should be a fun Game 3, 2-1 in the room here in favor of the Oklahoma City Thunder, taking a 2-1 series lead. In this segment, we're going to turn our attention to football. Minicamp has started, and one of the big stories of the offseason yet again was Aaron Rodgers. A new report coming out from ESPN's Adam Schefter says that he was the third quarterback, not the second, not the first, the third quarterback on the mind of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll talk about what that means for the future and the fact that they're kind of stuck with him now, what that looks like going into this season. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, June 10th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little bit under the hood of Aaron Rodgers. The big story coming out recently is a report from Adam Schefter. Aaron Rodgers was the Steelers' third choice behind not only Matthew Stafford, which makes perfect sense to me, if we're being completely honest. Matthew Stafford is a better quarterback right now than Aaron Rodgers is, but also behind Justin Fields. And this one, I think, is a little bit more interesting. Justin Fields was already in the building. It seemed like they preferred Russell Wilson to Justin Fields in a lot of the reporting. Now it's coming out that they wanted Justin Fields the whole time, and it sounds like Russell Wilson wasn't even on their radar. At least he was lower down than Aaron Rodgers. This feels a lot different than the reporting was to me. Am I way off on that? What is your take on this report coming out, Nolan?
I think that what the Steelers were doing, they honestly should have pursued Stafford or kept Fields. I think both of those options would have been a lot better than getting Rodgers. I don't really like Aaron Rodgers. Not only did he play for Green Bay, the Lions rival, I think he's a stuck-up, he's an egotistical maniac, and I just don't like him. I think he's a complete locker room toxin, cancer. I think he's just the worst person to have on your team. He's, 4-time MVP, Super Bowl champ. He's not a bad quarterback. I think he's a bad dude. Matthew Stafford is so much better than he is. Honestly, not all the time. But right now, I would much rather have Matthew Stafford on my team rather than Aaron Rodgers. I think anyone in the NFL would say that. I think anybody with a brain could honestly see that. He has better weapons. Not only he would be a great quarterback for Steelers now. They just got DK Metcalf. They have a great tight end in Pat Freiermuth. So he could be a great weapon over there. And he was able to do a lot with Cup and LA, obviously Stafford. But I think he could really fit the Steelers' room right now. But even if they didn't get him, they could have stuck with Justin Fields. Justin Fields had a great record too when he started last year with the Steelers. Great record. He's a good quarterback. He fit the system well. He had a lot of talent. He had a decent amount of talent around him where he could have succeeded. But they decided really not to utilize him as much as I honestly thought they were going to. And I think that they kind of wasted him there. I wouldn't say waste him, but I thought he was going to be used a lot more than Russell Wilson. I really thought they were going to, but they proved me wrong. But if I'm the Steelers, I would have kept him around rather than getting, Aaron Rodgers. I think, like I said, I just don't like Aaron Rodgers quarterback for the Steelers right now than Aaron Rodgers will be this season.
Yeah, Jake, very similar question to you. We went over the reporting that came out here, but it was, again, just kind of weird to me based on how the offseason went for the Steelers. Does this report make sense? And do you really buy this from Adam Schefter about the Steelers?
Honestly, everything else that's come out of Pittsburgh this offseason kind of sounds like this isn't the case. It sounded like they did like Russell Wilson more. You saw when Russ was hurt at the beginning of the year, yes, you saw Justin Fields start, but then when Russell Wilson's healthy, Russell Wilson takes over as the starter last year for the Steelers. I do think it's a little interesting that it sounds like they preferred Justin Fields, just because to me it seems like if they did really prefer Justin Fields, you already had him in your room. Why would you even let him get out of Pittsburgh, right? Why would you even let him get to free agency? You re-sign him to a 1, even a 2-year extension where it's kind of built into basically a 1-year deal. I just think it makes a lot of sense. So if that really was the case, why did you not just re-sign Justin Fields right at the start of the offseason rather than letting him walk to the New York Jets? I don't know if that's really the case, because it honestly kind of seems like this was always pointing towards Aaron Rodgers. Everything we heard from Pittsburgh was Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers. And I just don't know if he really was their third choice. I mean, it makes sense from an organizational standpoint. I certainly would have had Aaron Rodgers as my third choice there. But I don't know. From everything we're hearing, I don't know if that really was the case for the Steelers this offseason.
Yeah, it's a very interesting case because of all of the rumors that they were involved in, right? You had the Matthew Stafford rumor, which, of course, Matthew Stafford, number one option if he was available, but I doubt he ever truly was available on the market. The Rams were always going to sign him back, and they were never really going to let him leave. Justin Fields, you make an excellent point there, that he was already in the building, and same thing with Russell Wilson. I know that the owner came out saying that they wanted to sign one of the two of them. Justin Fields made more sense as the younger quarterback. I know they seem to have preferred, based on their actions in the middle of the season, Russell Wilson, but they did not seem super interested in signing him. Aaron Rodgers was kind of just the last one there. And it's not necessarily like he's the worst quarterback in the league right now. He comes in, he probably slots in somewhere around the 18 to 22 range in quarterbacks, just off the top of my head here. But there are a lot of ways that this could go badly. Nolan, you brought up the fact that he has become this kind of locker room cancer, this detriment to have on your team because of his off-the-field issues. That could very well have pushed him down on the list, aside on top of the fact that he is going to be 42 years old. We talked a little bit about how this fit looks, but is this report to me is kind of shocking that it even came out, that the Steelers allowed it to come out. Such a good organization allowed them to kind of trash who their guy is, right? what does this mean? How much confidence do you really think the Steelers have in Aaron Rodgers? And is there a possibility that if he doesn't play well, he gets benched for a guy like Mason Rudolph, or even the sixth rounder that they drafted out of Ohio State?
I mean, honestly, I was talking to a few of my friends who are from Pittsburgh who are Steelers fans. They have confidence in Aaron Rodgers. Do the Steelers? I really don't think they do. I think they just signed him to sign him because they needed a legit quarterback who they think can start. I just don't think Mason Rudolph is gonna. I don't think he's starter material. Will Howard, he could be, but he needs to build up some. He needs to build up NFL skill. He just got drafted, won a championship in college. Congrats to him. But he's no NFL starting quarterback, not at all. He had some of the best weapons on the offensive side of the ball in college football last year, especially just Jeremiah Smith. But I mean, they need a legit quarterback, and the Steelers, they honestly just took the best guy available, who were obviously Aaron Rodgers. I don't like him, but he is a good quarterback. He's a 4-time MVP. He has a Super Bowl ring. I mean, you can't deny the fact he's a great quarterback, but he's getting pretty old. He's 42. The past few years, he's kind of dwindled in his skill. He still makes a lot of good plays. Don't get me wrong, but it's nothing like he used to be in Green Bay. He should have never left Green Bay. He should have never left. Him going to the Jets is probably one of the worst things that happened to his career and to his name. Honestly, he just the darkness is street. That was honestly the biggest thing that made me stop liking him, and that was him going to the Jets. I feel like if he was still, maybe in Green Bay, something like that maybe wouldn't have happened. But who knows? But if I'm the Steelers, honestly, I really don't have too much faith in him. He could, look at him, his past, and think, yeah, maybe he does have a good future here. But me personally, I just don't think he has a good future there. I don't think he'll do well. He has some offensive around him. He's got some good offensive weapons. He's got a decent line, so he could succeed. But I kind of hope he doesn't, so he just retires sooner. But I just don't think he'll be. I don't think he'll be what everybody's making him out to be. Just some great quarterback who can come out of nowhere. He's had a good few years, but I think after this year, if he does slightly bad, I think he's going to hang it up, but I kind of hope he does.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, what you said here, where you're not sure how great of a year, how great of a fit it's going to be. We've had a lot of discussions here in the past year, just in general, about the state of safety of Coach Mike Tomlin over there. Like, how hot of a seat is he really on? Because you ask some Steelers fans, they want him out of there right now. You ask some Steelers fan, they say he is doing a good job, right? It's kind of become a state of mediocrity that people are pissed off with, and you can't really be too mad at Steelers fans for feeling that way. They haven't won a playoff game in over 10 seasons, right? They've been just barely good enough to scratch the playoffs in most of those years, but it's never really felt like that team is a true contender. If Aaron Rodgers flames out here, how much longer does that Mike Tomlin regime have? How hot of a seat, Jake, is he really on?
I think it's hotter than it should be, and I will say I am very much against the fire Mike Tomlin train. I just think this guy's never had a losing season as a head coach in the NFL. Over 20 years. We do forget this. I mean, but I can understand part of the argument where there kind of seems to be a ceiling on all of these Steelers teams of the first, maybe the second round of the playoffs. And frankly, it kind of seems that it's very possible that Aaron Rodgers does flame out in 2025 with Pittsburgh. I just don't know. Will we ever really truly see Pittsburgh buy into a full rebuild, re-tear, and completely just tearing the team down to its nuts and bolts? I just don't know if I can see that from the Steelers franchise.
I think the only way that happens is if, again, you need Hayward to retire. You're still going to have your guys on defense. TJ Watt, he's holding out for a contract right now, but he'll get his contract. Aaron Rodgers needs to truly and spectacularly flame out because they would have to fire Mike Tomlin, and that is going to be that straw that breaks the camel's back. I think as long as Mike Tomlin is there, they're never truly going to bottom out. They need to say this is a new era with a new coach and we're going to start fresh. I just don't see that happening under Mike Tomlin, which is why I think it'd be best for his career and for the Steelers, honestly, to move off of him, find another place, kind of like Andy Reid with the Eagles, right? I mean, he was labeled as a playoff choker. He was labeled as a guy that could not win the big game, someone that just failed to get it done in Philly. And now look at him, one of the greatest coaches of all time, coach and bringer up of a dynasty with Patrick Mahomes. Players make a big difference, and sometimes just a change of scenery can do wonders for both the Steelers and for Mike Tomlin.
That's a great example is Andy Reid, where honestly kind of similar to just a guy losing his voice in that locker room over time, right? Didn't have success in Philly, but kind of just after year of disappointment, right? It seemed like it had run its course, that relationship. It kind of almost feels like the same thing with Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh here, where it kind of seems like we're at the end of this relationship. It's kind of ran the duration of its course. We'll see if, I don't know how bad Pittsburgh's really truly going to be this year. And while we're still on Pittsburgh, you brought up TJ Watt. Just for speculation's sake, what happens if TJ Watt does not get his contract? And if they do somehow have to move off of TJ Watt?
They move off of TJ Watt, this team is immediately tanking, right? You're going to trade him if you're not going to sign him, right? That's the only two options. You're not letting him walk for nothing. But you get that. You get a nice little start with some teams. There are plenty of teams that could use a good pass rusher like TJ Watt, and even teams that don't need a pass rusher would kill to have a guy like TJ Watt on their roster. If they're unable to, I think that is the other thing that could trigger the rebuild. Him or Mike Tomlin need to go, and once one of those pieces fall, it's just gonna fall down like a big like a stack of cards, right? House of cards right there. It's just you pull the wrong one, and everything's come crashing down in Pittsburgh. It's a really delicate situation over there, but I think you're right. I think it's about time it's run its course, but we will see, because maybe we've got another year or two of Mike Tomlin if Aaron Rodgers can resurrect himself and become that, not MVP level guy, but top 15 level quarterback that we all know he is capable of being. But outside of that, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention back to the world of basketball. It's kind of gone under the radar a little bit, but the Knicks, they still need a new head coach. There's been a couple of names that have come in or fallen out of the race. We'll talk about each of those coming up next here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus, today joined by Jake and Nolan. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the situation in Pittsburgh with Aaron Rodgers, reportedly the third option, and what that could mean for their future this year. In this segment, we turn our attention back to the hardwood. We talked about the NBA Finals in segment 1, but here we have to talk about the New York Knicks, one of the most high-profile coaching searches there has been in a very long time, has a new favorite. Last time we talked, it seemed like Michael Malone was going to go number 1 or was going to be the new head coach, the odds-on favorite, but that has changed. He slipped all the way down to 3rd. We'll talk about who passed him and what's changed overall. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much sticking around, talking some sports with us here on a beautiful Tuesday, June 10th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into what's going on here with the Knicks, specifically the buzz around Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd has now become the odds-on favorite to be the next head coach of the Knicks. When we talked about this, when it first came out, Michael Malone, who's dropped to 3rd behind Johnny Bryant and Jason Kidd there, was the odds-on favorite, but those are the only 3 guys that aren't incredibly long shot odds. We talked about a couple other guys that have since dropped out of the race. Taylor Jenkins has climbed a little bit. Steve Nash and guys like Rajon Rondo are on here, as well as Mark Jackson. There's a couple crazy names on this list right here, but it seems to be favoring a 3-horse race between Jason Kidd, Johnny Bryant, and Michael Malone. I'll start with you here, Jake, on this one. Out of those 3 names, or maybe a wild card name, what are you hearing? What do you think is going on in this head coaching search for the New York Knicks?
Give Rajon Rondo a chance now. Come on, man. No. But seriously, though, I think Jason Kidd, yeah, we have heard a lot of his name the past few days, though, according to The Athletic, they're saying that Dallas really is expecting Jason Kidd to be their head coach next year. Still has 2 years left on his deal there as the head coach of the Mavericks. So I think that's going to be something to kind of monitor with the Jason Kidd situation, is the fact that he's still under contract. Could he get traded again as a coach? That'd be kind of cool. Getting traded twice as a head coach would be kind of an interesting situation there. But from an on-court perspective, I think you want to look at a Jason Kidd type. I'm not really a fan of the Mike Malone conversation. That just never really kind of made sense to me. A guy that his tendencies are really similar to Tom Thibodeau, and just how they kind of dig down and are stuck to their ways. Doesn't kind of seem like that's what New York is going to want here. It's going to be interesting, though, I think, what direction they kind of go. I think they're going to try to take a swing here at Jason Kidd. It's the New York Knicks. Jason Kidd is the biggest name out there, a guy that would make a lot of sense for them. So I would not be surprised at all to see them take a swing at Jason Kidd. I just think some of the logistics there might be a little tricky to kind of deal with.
Yeah, I think Jason Kidd, you kind of hit the nail on the head right there, why it's such an interesting conversation. A guy who is currently the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks. I understand New York is a big market, but is it that much better of a situation in New York than it is in Dallas? I understand the whole Luka trade probably got under his skin, and he probably wants out of Dallas, but you're getting Cooper Flagg in. You have, if everyone can stay healthy, Anthony Davis. You'll get Kyrie back by the time the playoffs come around. You'll have Klay Thompson. You have Cooper Flagg now on that team. It's a promising roster over there, and one that is probably comparable, if not better, than the Knicks. I know the West is a mess. Trading for a coach just feels kind of desperate. And Jason Kidd, I also don't think is that great of a head coach, honestly. We've seen him kind of flame out with a lot of pretty solid teams. I know he took the Mavs all the way to the finals last year, but that can be on Luka. Right.
Look at what happened in Milwaukee, though.
Right. Once they fired him, they win a championship. Right. It's one of those times where he never seems like the guy that's going to push you over the edge, and they need the guy that's going to push them over the edge, regardless of the assets it would take to trade for a head coach. I just don't like this. A guy that's sitting at a career coaching winning percentage of .516. I just don't love this move. What are your thoughts on Jason Kidd potentially going to the Knicks, Nolan?
I like it. I think ever since Luka got traded, I think he's been thinking, I want to get out of here. Because I know that he didn't want Luka to leave. You could see in that press conference with Nico Harrison that he despises Nico with everything that he has. You know it. You could see it in his eyes. And I think, honestly, he would like New York. I think New York would like him. I don't think there'd be a reason why he wouldn't succeed there. You're saying, they have a good situation coming in. You're not wrong. Cooper Flagg, obviously the best recruit in the country, number 1 overall pick. I mean, that's huge for him. AD. Klay Thompson, he's hit or miss. He's getting pretty old. He could be good, could be bad, never know. But honestly, I'm still kind of surprised. I'm honestly very surprised that name came up. But speaking of other coach, Rajon Rondo, there's no way that came up. I heard Chris Paul too. Meta World Peace was saying he'd go coach them too, which I thought was hilarious. He commented under it.
If Ron Artest was the head coach of an NBA team, that would be incredible.
It would be awesome. That would be the most gritty NBA team we've ever seen ever. He would just coach pure violence. It's all he would do, and I would love it. But I'm just surprised.
I think they'd practice in a UFC ring.
Go, bro. Let's go fight. Yeah, that's their whole practice is starting the fight. That's their entire practice. But, I mean, I'm kind of surprised. This came out of nowhere. Jason Kidd was not an option last week when, Coach Thibs got fired. Now, all of a sudden, he's the number 1 in the race. Kind of surprised. I'm surprised Michael Malone fell that far. Honestly, I still think he should be, honestly, the number 1 coach to go anywhere. I think he's the best available coach to go get. I think that even though, there was some, I guess, bad blood. Not even bad blood. I just think I can see why he got fired. But if I'm coaching Jokic, possibly the greatest center of all time, I'm gonna play him as much as I can. He is currently the best player in the NBA. I'm gonna run his minutes. If I'm gonna win games, I'm running Jokic. Yeah, he's gonna be gassed, but I'm trying to win games here. That's how it is. And I don't know if he'd fit well in New York he would fit well in New York actually with that because all of his players are already so physically demanding of themselves to play for so long. Not, Karl-Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson, they have to switch out. But he'd run the same offense Thibs would. And I think that maybe under a better coach, and I think Michael Malone's a better coach than Thibs, I think it could work out. I could see why Jason Kidd would come in, but I think Michael Malone is still the number 1 option in New York. Jason Kidd wouldn't be a bad get whatsoever. But, him leaving Dallas right now would be kind of surprising. But, I mean, Jason Kidd, Ron Artest, and Tom Thibodeau are my top 3. It's heavily on Ron Artest.
I just want to stick on that Jokic conversation real quick. How high do you have him up there that you're talking about maybe the greatest center of all time?
He's already a 3-time MVP in the NBA Finals. I mean, he's done that in 10 years, 11 years? I mean, he's not a top 10 player yet, but in the center conversation, he can already be based off accolades alone, he could already be a top 3 center of all time, just based off accolades. I mean,
I don't know. There's a lot of centers out there, man.
I know. Hakeem, Shaq, Tim Duncan. I mean, there's
this guy named Kareem Abdul-Jabbar too.
He played with
Will
Plumbers,
Chamberlain, Bill Russell.
No, I'm joking. I know, but there's
Wilt
so
Chamberlain?
many. Just based off accolades alone, he could honestly comparable to that and the player comp now compared to back then, you can make that argument. I'm just saying he could put him top 3. I'm not putting him top 3. I'm putting him top 5 center right now, all time. I think he's already up there. Honestly, I think he just proved himself to be a top 5 center. Historically, I think he's just that good of a center. He's averaging a triple double, Every year he's won the MVP. He won it 2 straight years. He honestly could have a 5P MVP. He should not have lost to Joel Embiid in that year. He should not have lost to Joel Embiid. He could have beat SGA this year, which I believe he did. He could have. And he could have a 5P MVP, but voter bias and voter fatigue is a real thing. So they wouldn't let that happen. And plus, he already has an NBA championship, Finals MVP. I mean, what more can you say? If he had that 5-time MVP and Finals MVP and Finals, he'd be the greatest center of all time. But he has 3. He's only saying 3 MVPs. It's kind of crazy because it's Jokic. He only has 3 MVPs, which is insane. But I mean, he could, like, accolades alone, be a top 5 center all time. But his playing style, just the way he plays, you wouldn't even think it because just how out of shape he looks. But I could have him in my top 10 centers all time already.
I respect it.
And when he retires, he will be a top 5 to 3 center. I think he has at least another 2 MVPs in his career, and he's still in his prime. He is still a young player in his prime. He's only going to get better, hopefully, and he could honestly end up being top 3 to top 5 center of all time.
I think you could absolutely make the argument he's already top 5, but I think top 3 is a little crazy. Probably Shaq, Kareem, Wilt, definitely all of them ahead of him. Probably Hakeem ahead of him too. I don't know if you count Tim Duncan as a center, but if he is, he might be ahead of him as well.
Forward, center. He was like 6'10". I mean, he's basically a center. Just based off. I mean, it just kind of depends where you put him. I think I'd probably put him at power forward, but you can put him in the center conversation as well if you need to.
But yeah, outside of that, getting back to the New York Knicks here a little bit, you brought up a couple guys. Moses Malone was the favorite. There's a couple other names that I've heard some buzz that I think are interesting. One of them being Mark Jackson. He, of course, left. Last time he coached, he was coaching the Warriors. That one did not go well for a large number of reasons. I'm shocked his name is even back up in discussions. I think it seems you feel the same way, Jake. What are your thoughts on him being tossed around in this potential job in New York?
Well, props to Mark Jackson for still getting interviews 10 years after he flamed out of the greatest dynasty we've seen in the modern era in the NBA. But I'm shocked that Mark Jackson's honestly still getting NBA head coach interviews. This is a guy that's been on the sidelines for 10 years now, but we've seen crazier things. Which one of the Van Gundys just came back to take over? Oh, Jeff's an assistant coach now, after 15 years on the sidelines. So I guess crazier things have happened. I would be absolutely shocked if Mark Jackson became the new head coach of the New York Knicks. But props to the guy for still getting interviews 10 years later. I will give him that, though.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple guys deeper on the list. I just wanted to brush up on. Steve Nash has found his way to climbing on the list. He's a guy that I think is really interesting. He doesn't have too much coaching experience, but he was one of the smartest players of his time, and he's someone that I think could be a solid head coach. Not sure if it's really the best situation for him up there. Danny Hurley still hanging around. He hasn't officially pulled his name out of the hat there, but I don't really think he'll be going. If I had to put my money on it right now, a guy like Johnny Bryant is sticking out to me. He's currently second in the odds, only behind Jason Kidd. But he is a younger guy with a different mentality, and I feel like that's kind of what the Knicks need right now. Not some retread hire, not having to give up a bunch for a 500 coach and Jason Kidd. I think Johnny Bryant is my favorite to get the job right now.
Yeah, Johnny Bryant makes a lot of sense. Another guy, too, kind of on a similar mindset. Dave Bliss, the Oklahoma City Thunder's top assistant, kind of on that mindset of younger, non-retread coach, gives somebody new a first-time chance. And honestly, we've seen first-time head coaches be more successful probably in the past couple of years. You look at like Ime Udoka taking his first job and then going to Houston after. You look at Will Hardy kind of taking over Utah. Like some of these younger guys have really solidified themselves as rising stars in the NBA. I think the Knicks should probably follow that train more so. Another name too, James Borrego, former Hornets head coach. And the Hornets haven't been nearly as good since he left. Obviously, they weren't great when he was there, but they were over 500, which is something to be said when you're talking about Charlotte Hornets basketball. So I think that's another name too. Former Spurs assistant, could be in the mix for the Knicks. But I think kind of on that Johnny Bryant, Dave Bliss, James Borrego track is something we're going to end up seeing.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you here. Nolan, you got any wild cards you think might take this job?
It's Ron Artest, man. I'm telling you. No, I'm joking. I mean, I was just thinking in my head, Monty Williams are going back to the NBA just so I could see them be horrible just because I beat the Pistons. But, really no. Honestly, I'm still really set on Michael Malone. I really think, that's just the best guy available. I think he's just a phenomenal coach. He won an NBA championship. He has he has a few rings. I mean, or just a ring, but he's still a great coach. I think he would just be honestly probably their best fit. There might be some sleeper I'll probably hear. It'll probably end up being some random coach from like Oakland basketball or something like that. Because you never know. These head coaches always just get hired in the most random times. Like I never heard of Ime Udoka until he got drafted or selected to be the head coach for the Celtics, and then he went to Houston. He's doing good things over there. But I mean, I really don't know because there's so many coaching jobs available. There's so many people who have the capability to go coach it. I mean, obviously, I'm not the best with head coach names either. So I'd have to probably look up like a million, like all the coaches I think of right now, but it's a lot, and I'm not trying to do that. So honestly, the number one guy I'm thinking about right now is Michael Malone. I think he's the number one fit. And then Ron Artest is the number two guy. I think he'd be a great coach. He would do really good in New York, and he'd coach them very well. I'm being sarcastic, if you can't tell. Just Michael Malone. Michael Malone's the number one guy, in my opinion.
I love it. This is something that we'll keep doing breakdowns on until this head coach gets found, because it's a very interesting, potentially championship-altering kind of move. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we take a look back at college football. We talked a lot in kind of a big overview about the House settlement yesterday. Today, we're going to focus a little bit more on what it means for these schools, talk about potential solutions for problems that we foresee coming up with this new era of college sports. We'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, June 10th. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the Knicks head coaching job that changes Jason Kidd now as the favorite. In this segment, we turn our attention over to the world of college sports. With the House versus NCAA settlement officially approved, there's going to be a lot of massive changes. One thing that I wanted to focus on a little bit is what's going to happen specifically with the transfer portal and maybe some solutions for that. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with us here on a beautiful Tuesday, June 10th. But like I was saying, we are going to get a little bit here into what's going on, specifically with the transfer portal, how that's going to be affected in this new era of college sports. Of course, now that players can be paid, this opens the door for contracts. And contracts, obviously not for every single player, but it will drastically change how movement of players go in the NCAA. Right now, we're kind of in what is a Wild West, no rules. Everyone can just go however many times they want. And it's something that I personally am not a huge fan of. It's something that I think needs some kind of fix. And as the water starts to level out a little bit with the schools that are going to be paying, there's going to be some interesting solutions for what's going to happen with the players left behind. So I'll start this one off with you, Jake. First of all, can the transfer portal survive this new era? And if so, what does it even look like right now?
Yeah, I think there certainly is a way for the transfer portal moving forward to still remain in the world of college athletics. The one thing, though, that I do think is certainly going to have to be adjusted is the presence of two transfer portal windows specifically for football, one being in the winter and one being in the spring. Now, it kind of seems like everybody around football agrees that there should only be one. Where the disagreement comes in is when that should take place. Should it be in December, January, or should it be in May, kind of after the academic year has already finished up? University presidents, officials, they're obviously a little more receptive to that version, whereas, your football coaches are going to want that December window just for ease of getting players into spring practice, and getting them on the roster. But it's certainly going to be interesting to see what happens with the portal. I think we're going to see some changes. And then, too, you kind of mentioned how there's really no rules. It's kind of the wild, wild west. I think one of the things we might see is the College Sports Commission step in and maybe reinforce some eligibility rules where you only can transfer once or twice. Could we kind of see something like that be reinforced? I think that's very possible too.
Yeah, there's a lot of rules that are going to start being put in when it comes to specifically the transfer portal. I think you're right. The first thing that's going to be decided is which transfer portal is going to be the only transfer portal window. If I had to put my money on it right now, it would probably be the May version of it. That way, you're not doing it, first of all, in the middle of the playoffs, which is something that is going to affect the fans the most. And choosing which window, as much as it wants to be a scholastic or an academic or an athletic decision, a lot of times it's just going to come down to what makes them the most money. And that's probably going to be doing it in May when it doesn't hold out some of these top players from participating in the brand new playoff formats like we saw last year with some players on Penn State and other teams that were in the playoffs, just holding out there. But one of the things that I think is super interesting as well is the fact that not every school is going to be paying money. And in this little trial run, this 5 to 6 year period where things are going to start to become more clear as to what the future of college football is going to look like, could we see something like a relegation system be put in for these schools? It's something that is a completely different conversation, but it's something that I think would work perfectly with college football, with the Power Four and the other conferences. You don't see it in American sports. It's a tough thing to implement, and I doubt they will implement it. But Nolan, is this something that you think would benefit the game, or is it something that you would think, realistic or not realistic, is just gonna be bad for it?
Honestly, I would love to see Kent State go 0-12 and get regulated down to the FCS and bring up like Ball State or another D1 or FBS D1 already, but bring up just some FCS school you've never heard of. That'd be awesome. But I mean, that's honestly just kind of like I would love to see it, but it is kind of unrealistic. There's no sport in the U.S. that already does that besides like MLS, but that's like that's like national, and there's no NBA, NHL, MLB, NFL. None of those teams do that. There is no relegation. There is nothing like that. And I think what type of relegation there is, players getting sent down to the minor/G League. There's no team relegation. I think that's fine. I don't think there needs to be a team relegation. I think what it is fine as it is. Even though there are some teams that kind of need to get relegated, if they would implement it, they would be getting sent down first. There's a lot of teams that would, but I think it would be pretty unrealistic. It'd be pretty cool to see, but it's not going to happen. And I think it would be helpful to some programs who need it, who obviously cannot compete at certain levels. But like I said, it's just not realistic. Plenty of programs have been struggling, but it's only going to come through. And even if like this $20 million these schools are going to get, I feel like even with that money, they still won't be able to satisfy and like be able to sustain a good program. $20 million, if you look at it, it's a lot. It's not a lot to a program like Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, those big SEC schools or Big Ten schools. You get $20 to $20 million, an Eastern Michigan or a Kent State or a Ball State. I mean, that's going to change the program. That $20 million could be useful. How they manage it, up to them. But relegation, it's a funny concept. I always think it's really funny when I see my soccer friends are complaining. My favorite team just got relegated down to the Champions League. Like, I'm pissed. Like, it's pretty funny to listen to. I just think it'd be completely unrealistic in the U.S. at least. It'd be funny, but just not possible.
The reason I bring it up is because of the fact that schools can now pay. And we're going to see schools like Boston College, schools like Syracuse, schools like Wake Forest that aren't necessarily going to pay that kind of money to stay competitive with the rest of the Power Four conferences. But there are schools in the group of five, right? You've got schools like Tulane, schools like Boise State, schools like Memphis, schools like James Madison that I'm willing to bet are going to pay a good amount of money to stay competitive in football. We've seen a lot of these schools already put a lot of money into their sports programs, into their athletic programs. And like I said, in this trial run, you want to make it as competitive as possible. You want the teams that are in that Power Four, in that spotlight, to be the ones that are trying to win, especially as you go more and more towards a pro model and potentially moving college football away from the rest of college sports. It's just one of those ideas that I think would level out the competition a little more and show which schools are really trying and which schools aren't. Of course, it's going to change based on how schools fund it. If a school decides to spend $10 million on basketball, they're going to struggle in football a little bit. So it's a little bit of a rough concept, but it's one of these things that I think could gain a little bit of momentum, especially around those group of five schools that are trying to stay competitive, those group of five schools that are really trying to build up a national style program. I think it's not the most unrealistic thing 2 or 3 years from now to think about being implemented.
I love the idea personally of a relegation kind of system where, so you go Power Four and then Group of Five and kind of separate it from there. And even more to your point, Jeremy, of what you're saying, what if you have that top one, those are the schools opting in and paying their players, and that bottom tier, those schools aren't. So you're dropping in and out. I think it would make a lot of sense. And then it would open up the avenue for so many more interesting matchups. You can even create kind of different playoff formats. You think of World Soccer, you have the Champions League, you have Europa League. You can implement something similar where you have that top league, I guess, that top division and that second tier division competing for different championships. I think it would be something that would be really intriguing. Plus, then you can get back to regional-based kind of geographic conferences where you have Arizona State, Arizona, BYU, Utah all back together, and it's not across the country. It'd be kind of fun. I don't know. I kind of like the idea.
Yeah, it's definitely a more out there idea. But getting back to the transfer portal just a little bit here, how much is it going to be affected? We're just going to assume here that it's going down to one window. It's going down to, let's say, the May window. Where does the transfer portal lie? Because it's the biggest piece of movement from players nowadays to these major programs. Is it still going to be that prevalent with these schools directly paying their players? Or is it going to start to fizzle out and only be for the group of five to be feeder schools to those bigger programs and vice versa?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead, Noel.
But thank you. I mean, feeder school. I mean, I don't like that. I mean, NIL is just. I'm not sure if it's still really going to be a thing after the season. If that's your kind of mean. I mean, if that's your kind of getting at. I mean, yeah, there's $20 million that's going to be helpful to some programs, but like I said, also not to others. Just because some programs already know how to manage that type of money, others don't. Some players are making that in 2 years. Some schools make that in 3. I mean, it just kind of depends on how it works. And the if we're going back to relegation, I like what Jake was kind of saying, how some of that, I kind of like how he was explaining it a little more. Just, I like the location base. I do like how I think conferences should go. I know they want to, make these mega conferences again, but a little back off that. But I do think, the geographic location is probably the best way to do that. But I don't know. I think that schools, this NIL thing, I'm not sure how much longer it's going to last just because of, there's $20 million. They're still paying these programs. It'll still be around, but maybe some shortcut, maybe some limitations we put on now because of this pension, because of this, doctrine that was passed. But who knows? Only time will tell. But I think we could end up start seeing, some limitations set in place soon.
Yeah, there's going to be.
I think
This is just the start of relegation. It's going to be not relegation, the start of regulation. Very similar words here. Well, it's going to be the start of laws being allowed to and having a governing body over this NIL period. So there's going to be a lot of changes, no doubt about it. Anthony in the comments says he thinks it's more going to be the transfer portal used for Division II schools to be a feeder into the group of 5 as opposed to the group of 5 into the just a way is for players to move up and down levels. And I think that's probably what it's going to be rather than moving from Power 4 to Power 4, because those guys, you have to imagine, would be under contract, and there's going to be a lot more of those secondary players, those graduate players that are looking to get a couple more years in there, not necessarily as a star player for a Power 4 team. Maybe they can find their way in there. I think that's a very interesting way for the future of college football specifically, but also a little bit in basketball because...
Yeah, I mean, I think contracts, that's the big issue, right? That's what are we actually going to have contracts between these universities and these student athletes? Because if we do, it makes everything a lot more regulated, and then you can kind of put some of these other guidelines in place. But if we don't have contracts, if it's kind of each university's doing its own thing, it's going to make it a lot more confusing across the board. And I think that's probably dependent. The transfer portal is going to be dependent on contracts, because if you have something written up where you can't leave for the duration of your contract, obviously that's going to change compared to if you don't really have anything written in stone and you're a backup and you're able to leave after a semester. The player movement's going to be a lot more likely to happen at that point. So I think contracts is going to be the really huge point here of what's going to happen with this playing.
Yeah,
I really don't like contracts. Sorry, Jeremy, real quick.
Go for it.
But I really I know we're talking about it. I just really don't like the fact that college players are about to be able to sign contracts. I really don't like that. College players should not be signed. I don't mind. I know it. I would rather have them transferring every year than signing a contract. These are college athletes. This is not a professional organization. These guys are not pros. They're making pro money, but they're still not pros. They're not good enough to be pros yet, most of them at least. But They're not. I just don't think a college kid should be needing an agent to help them sign contract with schools. I just really don't like that. I would much rather have them be transferring every year for 3 years than signing a 2-year contract and being forced by that school to stay there out of their I know it's like NFL players, pro players, they sign contracts. That's different. That's their job. And that's their full-time job. These college players, do not forget, they are student athletes. A lot less emphasis on the student part nowadays. A lot of people are just there for sports, but they're still student athletes at the end of the day. And I really feel like that's kind of taken away from the student part. They're still I'm like me and Jake. We're still both in college. We're not making millions of dollars to go there, but we're still in college and we're not athletes, but we're just students there. And I feel like if I, imagine me going to my school and just for under a contract to be a student, it's just weird. It's a totally different scenario. But I just don't like that idea. Imagine I didn't like it. I wanted to transfer out to a bigger school, to like SEC school. I don't know. I just don't like that. I just really don't like the idea of contracts in college for these kids to be signing. They're college kids, not pros. They're making pro money. Still should not be signing contracts at their age.
I feel
Nolan,
like
we traded your contract away. You're now attending the University of Miami. So congratulations.
Okay. Miami's fine. Wait. Miami, Ohio or Miami, Florida?
Up for debate still.
The player to be named later in one of those
Florida,
trades.
Yeah, exactly.
Miami, Florida would be sick. I would not be mad at Miami, Florida. Miami, Ohio. If I was studying business, I would love that. Anything else?
I'm pretty sure contracts, at least to me, feel kind of inevitable with the way that it's going. If I'm Penn State, if I'm Michigan and Bryce Underwood, for instance, I don't want him to go away, right? I committed $5 million a year to him out of my budget, right? That's something that you want to keep around, or at least have some kind of like buyout clause. Another interesting piece of this portal, Anthony asks, with the transfer portal, do you see schools eliminating the red shirt now? And that's something that honestly I had never even thought about. I doubt it, but I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts on how this could affect red shirts going forward with the roster sizes changing.
I think they stay. I don't think they leave. I think red shirts are too important. Honestly, medical red shirt, that's different. But I think with a lot of the COVID eligibility being thrown away, with it, finally ending, I think it absolutely has a reason to stay. There's not going to be any more 6th-year seniors. It's going to be at most, I think, a 5th year now, hopefully. If they're redshirt, I think a 5th year isn't too bad. When I'm seeing these 6th-year seniors on Iowa playing defense, I'm like Cade McNamara for Iowa. I mean, his COVID year, he redshirted. I mean, he's like in his 6th year at Iowa. I know he played in Michigan before, but he was like 3 years there. He's going to go on to his 3rd, right? I believe he stayed. I'm not sure. He didn't declare. He didn't get drafted. And it's going to be going on his 5th, 6th year. I don't know. It's really weird. But, with the COVID eligibility finally getting ending, basically, no more of that. With it running out. I was about to sneeze, sorry. But I think it's fine. I think, the red shirt's important. These guys, these kids are coming in, probably not fully developed. They're not ready to play. And they don't want to waste the year of their eligibility if they're not getting a single snap. So I think redshirting is still going to stay around. Give them the full 4-year experience, whether, if they stay there the 4 years, transfer out, wherever it is. They should still stay there, get their red shirt, play their 4 years, and move on. I think redshirting will probably not leave, in my opinion. I hope not.
Yeah.
I think it's more likely. Sorry. I think it's more likely to see probably gray shirts, medical red shirts, if anything, leave. And the only reason that I could maybe see something like that happening is just because of the new roster limits, where you're only going to have 105 roster spots available for football. It's a hard cap limit. So there's no more preferred walk-ons and having 40 of those guys on the sidelines. You're just not going to be able to do that. That's the only reason that I could see maybe going away with like medical red shirts, gray shirts, but getting rid of the traditional red shirt, I don't think that would be something that could happen.
There might be less, I think, but it's going to probably go down to, like we were saying, maybe we get some kind of transfer fee or something where a University of Alabama can stash a guy and redshirt him on Alabama A&M for a year or something like that. with some kind of deal that they've made.
I love the idea of transfer fees, kind of like paying for you have a Ashton Genty and Alabama goes, we're going to pay Boise State $3 million for him. I think that's kind of a really interesting concept that's also kind of from world soccer almost, but something that could kind of work out, because you think of the feeder schools. When you have, your big stars, you could actually kind of benefit off of them and help the program moving forward.
Yeah, I'm really just trying to turn college football into world soccer right now. That's the big business plan. Because honestly, I think it works. I don't know why college sports don't do it as much. I really do think that system works really well. It doesn't work in any other American sport because
talking about relegation,
transfer fees, it's all part of it.
Do the whole thing.
I just don't think relegation wouldn't work. I think there's just too many teams for it to work. Every year, new team getting imagine you're committing.
But that's also the reason it could work is because there's so many teams.
But imagine you're a commit. Let's say you're committed to Ball State, and that year they get relegated to the FCS. Just kind of unfair to those kids coming in. If we were talking about this earlier. Kids stop. A lot of colleges, maybe it was yesterday or today, I forgot already, but they're talking about schools not even really looking for high school recruits anymore unless you're the top 10. It's mostly just transfer portal guys. Imagine you're a kid, like I said, and you're going to committed to a college, they get relegated. What do? You have to go play for an FCS program and build your way back up after imagine these FCS programs and FBS have different NIL or payment limitations. Let's say you got paid to go to the school for $1 million a year or whatever, or for example, and then you go to the FCS school and now their max you're allowed to make is $200,000. That's kind of unfair to that kid who's going to lose all that money. It would be hilarious, don't get me wrong, but I'm looking more of on the side how will this look out for players and staff there? How would they how would happen? All that stuff. I think it'd be hilarious, don't get me wrong. Imagine just going 0-12 and you see this Kennesaw State going 0-12, relegated for 15 years and come back up as a powerhouse. But I mean, it would just be hilarious. But I'm not sure how that would work.
That's the beauty of it. It really is. I was thinking more just in the short term because, like I said, there's going to be a couple group of 5 teams that are willing to pay, and there's a couple of Power 5 teams that are not going to be willing to pay. And just thinking for the future, if you're making a super league, if you're splitting college football away, you want the teams that are going to pay to be in that top league, which is why you do this kind of system of elimination to get rid of the stragglers that aren't going to participate in a more professional league. But there's a lot of changes still to be made with the transfer portal, with the way that college football and college sports work overall. We'll break those down in a little while. We had a couple comments in the meantime from Anthony. He was talking about Miami football. He asked if we thought the accusations of overpaying players in Miami is the fact that it's a private as opposed to a public school, and they can kind of hide their numbers. What are your thoughts on that, Jake?
Miami was private.
No, if it's due to the institutional kind of, status, I think a lot more probably has to do with just the third-party collectives and the fact that they had a super booster kind of willing to pay for pretty much everything there. But it is kind of curious. I mean, giving Jackson Cantwell $10 million over 4 years to be your left tackle, you're putting up some pretty big numbers in terms of NIL there. But I don't know if that's a big kind of disparity between the public and private institutions. I could see that argument, though.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely a part of it. I don't know if it's the whole thing, but I think it's definitely a part of, those conspiracy theories, because you don't have it all out in the public like you do with the public university. But we will see. Lots of changes to be made around college sports and college football. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention over to the world of baseball. A bunch of exciting rookies have been called up, including the number 1 overall prospect in Roman Anthony. He made his debut yesterday. We'll talk about that and a couple other prospects that have been called up recently, rookies that are having phenomenal seasons. We'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, June 10th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over what we could do to fix college football in the transfer portal as we get prepared to enter a brand new era of college sports. In this segment, we are going to take a look at some of the exciting rookies around baseball, a couple of top prospects recently getting called up in the last couple of weeks, Roman Anthony, Jack Caglione, as well as a couple of other rookies that have really burst onto the scene this year. We'll talk about that in a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with us here on a beautiful Tuesday, June 10th. But like I was saying, we are going to get here a little bit into some exciting young rookies. We'll start off here with the big one, the one that got called up just yesterday in Roman Anthony. Roman Anthony, the number one overall prospect in the entirety of the MLB. He came out in game 1 0 for 4, had a fielding error in a 10-8 loss, but did have an RBI. He collected his first base hit today in a game against the Rays. He has been one of the most hyped up prospects for a very long time, and he finally gets his chance with some injuries up for the Red Sox. Nolan, I'll start here with you on this one. What do you make of Roman Anthony's debut, and what can we expect out of him in the future? Is he going to live up to all the hype?
The fact that the Red Sox, I mean, obviously they're going to pull him up eventually, but it took him to hit a 500-foot grand slam for them to finally pull him up. Still kind of surprising to me. But hey, look at him now. The kid made it to the show. I mean, he got the big ticket. He's there. Last night, 0 for 4. Debut game, in my opinion, that shouldn't count. He was probably so nervous being in front of that, that Boston fan base. One of the most intense fan bases in any sport, honestly, is Boston. And he's at home in front of the Green Monster. Probably one of the most, one of the most menacing things you could see in baseball is that wall. And 0 for 4, jitters, RBI, he got an RBI out of it, and that shouldn't count. He had an error as well, that outfielding error, went under his glove. Also a case of the jitters. I give him, some leeway, because just now, whenever they're playing the Marlins right now, or the Rays, and he just had a 2 RBI, a single, and earned 2 runs out of it. He got 2 run RBI, and I think that first game shouldn't count. He is a phenomenal athlete. He's the number 1 overall prospect for a reason. First overall pick. I mean, not even him. The Red Sox have the first, 3rd, and 5th overall prospects in baseball. 3rd and 5 are still down in the minors. I'm sure they'll come up by the end of this season as well. If these injuries persist, the Red Sox will have the 1st overall prospect, the 3rd, and the 5th all on the same field. 2 in the outfield, 1 in the infield at the same time, and boy, is that scary, because we saw how they played against the Yankees in their series against the Yankees, especially in that game 3 where they won 11-5 with honestly Rafael Devers had a good game, but honestly no one else really did. It was mostly just a lot of good hits, and this Red Sox team is honestly, they're not a power team besides Devers in my opinion. Bregman, but he's hurt right now. I'm not sure what's wrong with him exactly, but he wasn't playing. And Duran, he had a pretty slow game. He had some few hits, but nothing crazy for him. But this Red Sox team is a good team. They honestly, the fact they're under 500 right now is still surprising to me. If you look at that roster, they have their rotations are great. Their bullpen is good. And, seeing them below 500, they're about, I think, 32 and 36, I believe right now. And, seeing them below 500 is very crazy to me. They have a good GM in Cora, good coach in Cora, manager, whatever you like to call him in baseball, manager. He's a good he's a good manager. But I think, honestly, by the end of the season, he could be gone. This is a good team that has a lot of expectations. If they do not finish at least above 500 and make the playoffs, he will be gone, and this Red Sox team will be without a manager for their offseason, and they'll have to focus on getting a new one. There's a lot of good managers out there right now, but not really a lot, but there's a few good ones the Red Sox could take. But, back to Roman Anthony. Great athlete. Finally got it. His first. This is his first, in my opinion, first official game. First one doesn't count, and already has a 2-run RBI. So I mean, he's future looks bright for this kid. He's going to be a great athlete his entire career. I really hope he does. He's a great player, and I hope he just does well. I mean, he's a phenomenal athlete, so I don't see how he doesn't do well.
He's going to be very good. You already saw the potential, what he's going to be able to do with his ability to put the ball basically anywhere in play. That 2-run double he had today for his first major league hit ended up being the difference. They beat the Rays 3-1 just now, right off that green monster. He's going to feast. He's going to hit so many doubles off of that green monster. But it's not just him that got called up recently. Also, the Royals called up Jack Caglione, who had been a top 5 rated prospect overall in MLB ever since he'd been drafted, really, out of Florida. The Royals had been struggling with bats, and he didn't have the best of luck in his first couple games, but he responded. He's hitting .240 through 6 games right now, and he's hitting the ball hard. More importantly, he needs to get a little bit of air under it if he wants to start hitting for power, but he is hitting the leather off of the ball right now, and it's been paying dividends for the Royals so far. He's someone that I don't necessarily think is going to be as productive as Roman Anthony is, but over there in Kansas City, for them having a bit of a down season, Jake, what can we expect out of him the rest of the way?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Jack Caglione too. I've seen him live when he was in college at Florida. I saw him play against Ole Miss. And this was a kid, mind you, we forget that he was a pitching prospect as well. He was an early round pitching prospect, a guy that played both ways at Florida. So he really has only been focusing on his hitting skills in the past year and a half. This is a guy that has a ton of untapped potential as a batter in the MLB. And I think you pointed out his hard hit rate. This is a guy that can smoke the ball when he gets a hold of it. 6'5", 250, a left-handed hitter too, which is always a big plus. If he can kind of cut down on his chase rate too. This has always been a big issue with Jack Caglione, is kind of his decision making, his chasing after certain pitches, and his strikeout rate. If he can kind of cut down on that, make a little more contact, this is a guy that has potential to be a middle of the order impact bat for the Royals, and a guy that could potentially anchor that lineup with Bobby Witt for years to come.
Yeah, you talk about that strikeout rate. It's sitting at around 20% right now. Still just basically 7 games into his career. It's something that the hitting coaches are just going to have to work on, but they feel like he's ready, calling him up. There's been a lot of really good coming out of him so far. I also want to talk a little bit about the Athletics, because they have a couple of young guys that have been making waves in MLB. We'll start off with potential all-star starting shortstop Jacob Wilson. Jacob Wilson has been the perfect contact hitter. He just does not miss when he swings at the baseball. He's not necessarily hitting it, a million miles an hour, but he's putting it in play. He's hitting basically 350 right now. Jacob Wilson has been a huge part of this A's offense that has been pretty good. Now, they're not winning a lot of games because of that pitching staff, but still one of the best pure contact hitters in all of baseball. People are saying he could get that starting nod over a guy like Bobby Witt Jr., maybe a lock for that AL Rookie of the Year right now. Talk to me a little bit, Nolan, about what you've seen out of Jacob Wilson so far.
I mean, over Bobby Witt is kind of crazy. Bobby Witt is like second in the MVP race right now. Or he's up there. I mean, it's like PC, like overall MVP, we got like Judge, PC, Pico Armstrong, and like Bobby Witt. I mean, hitting, it's not crazy to say that, I mean, the A's aren't, the A's are a team that have been kind of surprising the past 2 years. 2023, they were god awful. Let's just be honest, they were god awful last year. And now it's that, they're leaving Oakland, moving to Las Vegas, which I'm still kind of mad about. I like them in Oakland. I thought they were, Moneyball, like all that stuff. I thought it was a great movie, all that. But, they had a pretty decent season last year. Not horrible, but for how good that roster, for what they had, they did pretty good. They didn't make the playoffs, but they weren't they weren't a bad team. They weren't really bad. And this year it's the same thing. They don't even have like a full-on MLB stadium. I'm not even sure where they're playing, but I know it's not an MLB stadium. I think it's like their minor league, I believe. But like I don't know, but they're doing good. But overall, what he's done is pretty solid. I'm not following the A's intently. You see, I'm not following how they're doing as a team in the whole. But I have heard of this kid, and from what I hear, not only from you, but just from ESPN and the fantasy and all that stuff. He's a great player. I mean, obviously, if he's already getting shout outs to be an all-star over Bobby Witt, I mean, he can't be bad. That's for sure. Hitting 260 or 260 in his first 6 games, 240 in his first 6 games. That's pretty solid. Getting anything above a 200 in your first 6 games, especially as a rookie, that's great. Coming out of college, jump from college to professionals is a huge jump. It really is. You're still throwing in college. These college kids now are still throwing high 80s, 90s mile per hour. They've adapted. But when you jump up to the MLB, jump up to the show, and you're seeing these pitches, they have a lot more movement on their ball. It's coming at you faster. You don't think it is, but it is. And this kid's able to, he's still able to make good contact with the ball, keeping it in play. I mean, it's only up. I mean, these kids, a lot of these prospects have a very bright future. I know every year there's always a few prospects here and there that have a bright future. This year, a lot of them do. There's a lot of bright prospects in this draft, draft class, a lot more than normal. And I think that he is definitely one of them who has a bright future in the MLB, whether he stays with Oakland or Las Vegas now. But, I mean, I think he'll be there the next few years and then eventually get traded like most players do. But no, I think he could definitely be a very, very, very reliable player for the A's for the next coming seasons and hopefully going forward.
Yeah. The A's don't just have Jacob Wilson, though, and someone that has made the rounds recently. He's only been up for 14 games, but his defensive ability has been out of this world. He made one of the greatest catches that I have ever seen anybody make in the history of baseball yesterday in Denzel Clark, the 6'5", incredibly speedy center fielder out there. Just 14 games in, 3 web gems, 3 home runs stolen away. If you haven't seen it, you all need to go see the home run robbery of Nolan Jambor yesterday. Basically floats over the wall in order to rob this home run, but he already has 6 outs above average in just 14 games. That is an incredible pace right there. You talk about him being the 6th best defensive outfielder in baseball already. He needs to work on the bat a little bit, hitting just 214, but his speed, once he's on the base paths, he's already got 3 stolen bases. He's someone that can come in and make an incredible difference on defense, especially on the base paths. I don't know how sustainable this is, Jake, but it is something that I've had my eye on. You don't get to make plays like that and just hide away in the shadows. Is he someone that can stick around in the MLB, and can he fix his bat?
Let's see. I mean, we've seen some of these flash in the pan type runs before, How about Yasiel Puig? Remember when Puig came up in the first 15, 20 games there? No, but I mean, when you can move the way he can at the size that he can is unbelievable. And even if Denzel Clark's bat doesn't kind of catch up, the combination of fielding and base running is still going to keep him at the MLB level, I think, as a situational type guy. But you're right. I mean, what we've seen him doing, it's almost kind of in this new mold of player, Ellie De La Cruz, the dude from Pittsburgh, I can't think of his name right now, but they're 6'5", 230, but can run like the wind. And this is kind of the similar situation here. But props to the A's for having, at least a couple ball players that look MLB average this year at the minimum. So
They don't sleep on the A's, all right? They play in a minor league park. They're getting ready. They spent money. It's a big mess over there. But there have been a lot of good to come out of the A's this year, especially with a lot of the young players. We'll see how sustainable it is and if they end up selling them at the deadline, which with the A's, it's always a real possibility that they just say, we're moving on. We're done over here. But the last two that I wanted to touch on, some young guys, are a little bit more in the public eye, a little bit more well-known. Pete Crow-Armstrong, the best defensive outfielder for the Chicago Cubs over there. He is having an insane season. He's going to be up for a massive contract, as well as James Wood. These two guys have been compared. James Wood of the Washington Nationals. Both of these guys expected to make the All-Star roster, most likely, with the way that they have been playing, but they are the future of MLB right now with Chicago, with DC. There's been a lot of questions. Who do you want to start a franchise with these two? You have incredible defense and great bats on both sides, but the power with James Wood is something that PCA doesn't quite have. The defense of PCA is something that James Wood does not quite have. There are a lot of different ways that you can start a franchise with both of these two. Do you two have a preference? Who would you start a franchise with between those two guys?
PCA. I think Pete Crow-Armstrong. I mean, James Wood's a great player. Don't get me wrong. But I went to the Tigers-Cubs game this weekend, and seeing Pete Crow-Armstrong have an off game, still goes 2 for 4. That's an off game for him. And he was two singles, and they were some of the hardest hit singles I've ever seen in my life. And he had made some plays in that outfield. They weren't no ESPN, clips, but they were still very athletic plays he had to go get. And he really is a freak of nature. I'm not going to say, he's the greatest player of all time. But when I have friends from Chicago, and when they're watching we're watching him play, and they're all just saying, this is the greatest baseball player they've ever seen in their life. They're thinking this guy is the next coming of Babe Ruth. I mean, he's a great player, don't get me wrong, but he's not no Babe Ruth. But he is a great player. I mean, he's one of the best hitters in the MLB. He's not, he's not the greatest slugger. You're not going to count him out to go yard every time. But when he's up to play, you're going to think he's making good contact, regardless if there's a guy on base, RBI at least. I mean, he's a great hitter, one of the most athletic outfielders I think I've ever seen in this modern era of baseball. He is so fast. His ability to jump, his vert is insane on the run. He can dive. His arm is like he literally has a cannon for an arm. He is able to throw it from anywhere in the field. You might need it first, second, third, home, whatever. He's getting it there with maybe one hop at most to get it home. And don't get me wrong, James Wood's a great hitter. He's better, in my opinion, better hitter than PCA. He's got more power. But in the outfield, I think Pete Crow-Armstrong has him beat. And honestly, I think, the slogan defense wins championships. I think a better defender will help you win games. Now, they're both, I don't think it's very hard to be a great defender in the MLB. I do, but in the outfield, it's definitely a lot harder. You have to cover a lot more ground and a lot faster. And Pete Crow-Armstrong is a faster player. He is a faster player, and he's a better defender. So I'd rather take PCA over James Woods.
Yeah, no, definitely a tight competition between the two of them. I don't think you can really go wrong. I'm going to take James Wood in this one. Maybe I'm a little biased. I got my Nationals jersey right behind me. But James Wood is a special talent, what he's able to do. If he's able to be a little bit more consistent pulling the ball, because he just hits the ball a million miles away, a million miles an hour. It is incredible to watch him play and the way that he's burst onto the scenes. And like Anthony's saying, the defense is a little bit underrated for him. The Nationals are lucky to have a bevy of pretty solid outfielders. Jacob Young, a young guy who's just known for his glove out there in center. He played a really solid center field in the minor leagues. He's got moved over to the corner in left field because the Nats just have a lot of good outfielders out there. But he's tall, got big stride lengths, and he has the ability to play a really solid defense. I understand PCA, who is the best defender the best defensive outfielder in all of baseball by outs above average right now, is a very tempting pick there, but I got to stay with the hometown kid and James Wood here for my Washington Nationals.
Boo.
No, I got to agree with Jeremy on this one. It's a tough choice, but I would say James Wood too, just because I think when you look at kind of the history you look at center fielders like this, like Pete Crow-Armstrong, Grady Sizemore, somebody that comes to my head. That's an old name, but Pete Crow-Armstrong, he really didn't bat that well last year. This is the first year we've kind of seen his bat actually show up at the MLB level. I just think when you're trying to build a team, it's more realistic to bet on a corner outfielder that's got a ton of power to kind of have staying power over a defensive-minded kind of center fielder when you're looking at who you're going to focus on building a team around.
No, definitely. Like I said, you can't really go wrong with either of these guys. Real quick, before we end our segment, we have a question from the comments from Anthony. He asks, with the Marlins most likely trading away Sandy Alcantara this season at the deadline, do we see either or both of Noble Meyer and Thomas White being called up? Both of those guys, to answer your question there, Anthony, I don't know if they're going to get called all the way up to the show this year. They're both only in high A right now is the thing. And moving up past single A, past double A, past triple A, for a young guy, these guys are both 20 years old. You don't really want to rush your arms, and the Marlins aren't really in a position where they're going to be winning too many games right now. Sandy, with the way that he's performing, might not even get traded, is the thing there. He is someone that has over an 8 ERA, a guy that won the Cy Young just a couple years ago, and I'm a big Sandy fan. I love Sandy Alcantara. I love the way that he pitches in games when he's at his best, but he hasn't been at his best in a very long time. I don't know what kind of return you're expecting to get from that. A guy that's thrown a lot of innings, has a lot on his arm so far. It's not easy to come back from, but I could see it. There's a chance that they called up. I don't really see them moving all the way up the ladder that quickly, even if they are both in double A right now. I just don't really see it happening right now. And I don't even know if Alcantara gets traded. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to turn our attention to college baseball. The College World Series is here. The field is set in Omaha. We have some historic surprises going on down there. We'll talk about the teams, who we have winning, moving forward, and what some of the trends are going on in the College World Series right now. We'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign. A sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign. A sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign. A sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Starts to feel sorry for their boss. They are interrupted.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus, today joined by Jake and Nolan. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over some of the young stars of baseball this year after a couple of big guys got called up. little bit of run around the league with the rookie of the years so far. In this segment, we finish off our show talking a little bit about the College World Series. The College World Series field is set. They go back to historic field over in Omaha, Nebraska. A couple of really big storylines going through right now. We'll get into all of that. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, June 10th. But like I was saying, we're going to get here into the College World Series, one of the greatest and most underrated tournaments really in all of sports. We are here at the final 8. The Super Regionals are done, and what a crazy Super Regionals it was. We'll start off with the big story of this tournament, I think, that being Murray State. Murray State is just the 4th ever 4 seed from a super regional to make it to the field of 8, to make it to Omaha. This is an incredible Cinderella story from a program that doesn't have too much history in baseball. Murray State coming through here. I am incredibly impressed by what they have done this tournament run, taking care of Duke in that super regional most recently. They get a good matchup, probably the best matchup for them, going up against UCLA in the first round. It is double elimination, so they do get a chance even if it doesn't work out. But Jake, talk to me a little bit about this Murray State squad, how they got here, and why they're the Cinderella of this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it all started in that Oxford regional in Oxford, Mississippi, going up, being the 4 seed in that region, and then having to play Ole Miss in the finals of the regionals. You lose the first game. Ole Miss needed to win 2 in a row to advance. Ole Miss wins the first game, and then Ole Miss gets a lead in that second game, in that final regional game to go to Supers. Murray State able to come back, beat the Rebels on their home field, advance, and then go in and beat Duke. Not only beat them once, but beat them twice, including a 19-9 win. This is an absolutely magical run from Murray State. And not only them, how about Coastal Carolina? How about the Shanta? Second time in history, the only other time they've gotten in 2016, they won the whole thing. So give some love to the Shants too.
Absolutely, give some love to the Chanticleers. That is, we always give some love to the Sunbelt programs here. But Sunbelt baseball is pretty good. The Chanticleers are no joke. They are the hottest team in the sport right now. They've won 23 straight games. You mentioned this is the first time back in Omaha since they won it all in 2016. They are incredibly dangerous. And they, again, got a pretty good draw. I think Coastal Carolina versus Arizona, a team that has shown its struggles against some of these better teams in baseball. And then even the other side, the other half of that top bracket, Oregon State and Louisville, they're avoiding Arkansas and LSU until the very end. If either of them even get that far, it is just an incredible run for Coastal Carolina. And they're my favorites going forward to win it all, actually, this year. At least to come out of bracket number 1, that top bracket. I think they're able to take care of Arizona. I like Louisville. I like Oregon State. I just don't think those two teams really have the juice to get it done. It's all going to come down to who comes out of that bottom bracket. If Murray State can continue this magical run, I think there's a chance they get past UCLA. The real test is going to be Arkansas and LSU because that is the juggernaut matchup. So in this Omaha field right now, those two teams going up against each other should be a lot of fun. Arkansas still looking for his first ever College World Series victory despite it being baseball in Woo Pig Sooie country over there for a long time. What do you make of that matchup, guys? Because that is going to be the big one. Arkansas versus LSU.
I mean, like you said, I mean that's powerhouse versus powerhouse. That's a number 3 seed versus Arkansas versus number 6 seed LSU. I mean, obviously LSU, they just lost their best player of all time. I'm going to say it in Paul Skeens, but it doesn't matter. They have, but Baton Rouge, they're rolling. Baton Rouge is rolling. They are playing great baseball. They've obviously made their way all the way to I'm going to call it the Elite Eight. I think it's just easy for me because I like to talk about that like in college basketball terms, Elite Eight. I mean, they've made it, and they're playing a very good Arkansas team. Arkansas has been a baseball school for about as long as I can remember. They become, a more basketball, football school recently, but it's all, like you said, it's always been baseball. And this year, they're looking for their first. And this year, I think they're honestly going to get stopped by LSU. I think LSU, even with them losing Paul Skeens, they still have one of the best bullpens in college baseball. Their hitting for the past few games, from what I've seen, has been nothing short of great. So I think, honestly, LSU is going to stop them in their tracks. I think LSU is going to stop them from still stopping the powerhouse. I mean, Arkansas, obviously, they're the best team right now. They're the best team. They're the 3 seed based off ranking. But, I mean, with the number 1 and 2 gone, and there's nothing really set in stone left. It could be anybody. I mean, Murray State, seeing a team like Murray State, a team I didn't even know had a baseball program, I mean, this is insane. I mean, the only reason, honestly, I love seeing small teams like that, like Murray State. I bet you never heard of Murray State until John Morant. I mean, I didn't know who they were until John Morant was there. Like, Colts of Carolina. I mean, that's more of a football school. They're not even really like a football school either. They're like a mediocre football school at best. I mean, they had some upside, they had some here and there, but you never heard of a unranked Colts of Carolina making it to the Elite Eight in the College World Series, because I sure wouldn't think that would happen. But, I mean, it's awesome. I mean, LSU versus Arkansas, it's going to be a great series. I think LSU will win it because, I don't know, they're a better team in my opinion. And, I got a little bit of favoritism towards LSU. I got some friends who go there, so I'm kind of rooting for them. But, I got LSU in this series.
Yeah, no, that one should be the big battle of the first round. Now, there is always the double elimination part of this, which is something that I love about college baseball, and really another quirk that just makes this tournament so cool. You're never down, you're never out. It gives those teams an advantage, but you can have these magical comebacks. You can have these magical moments. We've seen SEC domination across the College World Series for a very, very long time. This year, we have a couple of contenders outside of the SEC. Right now, just 2 SEC schools are in the tournament, and they're playing each other in the first round. Is this a sign for the future? Is this something that we're seeing more of as time goes on? Less SEC domination, or is this just a 1-year blip where they kind of ate each other alive?
Jeremy, I hate to tell you, I think this might be a 1-year thing. For all fans of parity in the sport of college baseball, SEC, it's still baseball country down there. The one thing, though, I do think this is such an interesting year with the SEC, because you look at the 2 teams that made it in LSU and Arkansas, I don't even think they were the 2 of the top 3 teams in the SEC this year. Vanderbilt was better. Texas was better. Tennessee was better than both of these 2 programs. So it's kind of funny that I think those are the 2 that ended up making it out of the SEC. But I do love that this year it really does feel wide open. Like anybody can honestly win it. Louisville really looks like a solid team this year. There's just pretty much everybody across the board at least has a fighter's chance, and that's something that you can really say for every single year.
Yeah, and the regionals were wild. Like, you talk about Texas, you talk about Tennessee, you talk about Vandy. They all got eliminated so early on in this tournament. It's been a very special year in postseason baseball, and I can't wait to see how this one goes, because honestly, it has the potential to be one of those legendary runs for a lot of these programs that are talked about for a very long time. Who do you have winning, though? I talked a little bit of guys. I've got Coastal and I've got Arkansas coming out of each of those divisions, but who do you have coming out of the top and the bottom of those brackets?
Bracket 1, I'm looking at bracket 1 right now. I think, I could see, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see Louisville. I think Louisville's been playing pretty good. Obviously they're making it to the Elite Eight. Any team is possible right now. I would like to see Louisville get out. You know, a team that isn't really, in the media too much recently. You know, they're not a baseball powerhouse. They're not, as dominant in football as they used to be. You know, they still are pretty good. But, I could see Louisville making out. And, I would love to see, a Louisville versus Murray State. That'd be awesome. But I could totally see like a Louisville versus Arkansas or Louisville versus I think the winner of the LSU-Arkansas series will end up going to the finals. That's what I think. So I think it's going to be a Louisville versus either the winner of LSU-Arkansas.
I don't know. I do agree with you, Jeremy. I think Coastal honestly is my pick to come out of that top bracket. 23 wins in a row. They're just playing some phenomenal baseball right now. Kind of going back and forth on that bottom bracket. Honestly, I think it's probably the winner of LSU, Arkansas. I'm going to give that one to the Tigers right now. But for fun, let's just say it's going to be Coastal Carolina and Murray State.
I love it.
In the finals of the College World Series.
Let's go.
Best of 3. We're gonna say that's our pick for right now.
That'll be the official GSMC Sports Podcast pick, but we'll keep you updated on it because I think this tournament has the potential to be something special. And thank you everybody so much for tuning into today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus, joined today by Jake and Nolan. Thank you boys for joining me today. We will be back tomorrow. All the biggest news from around the world of sports will be right here. Make sure you're there. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.